Top of the hour. Let's go to IHSAA Commissioner Bobby Cox. Bobby, how are you today?
Morning, Jim. Just fine. How are you?
We're doing a lot better than we were 3 days and 18 hours ago.
Absolutely.
What do you say, man? How'd you find out about this?
Well, I was at the Huntington North Semi-State for the morning session, and I got a text, and it was a text from one of our IHSAA licensed officials. And the initial text was that there's been an accident on I-65, and it appears to be the Griffith fan bus. And shortly after I got that text, I received another one that said, no, it was the team bus. And so we were sitting there, myself and Assistant Commissioner Phil Gardner, who was already planning on coming to Lafayette Jeff for the second game. So we left Huntington, and Assistant Commissioner Gardner went to Lafayette, and then I went to the hospital, and where the majority of the players were taken and staff were taken. And then as I was getting ready to leave the arena in Huntington, I received the first picture of the bus. And as I looked at that, I thought I may be going to the morgue instead of going to a hospital. So as unfortunate as this whole episode was and how scary it was, we need to thank the good Lord that it wasn't worse than it was on Saturday.
Bobby, just curious. I mean, have you guys ever had anything like this before?
No, I've been in this office 16 years, and, I've had conversations with my predecessors, and none of us can remember a school bus accident heading to, whether it be a tournament game or a regular season contest, where to this magnitude, where students and staff members are injured to a position where they cannot continue on their journey that day. I've never seen it happen. There's certainly no script for this. You take the event as it comes to you, and you try to make the most judicious decisions you can. And as you are making those decisions, the focus of that decision-making process is certainly with the student-athletes that were on that bus.
All right, let's move on. I mean, obviously, I think you put it pretty well. You thought you might be going to a morgue and not a hospital. The initial pictures and still the pictures make it so it's some sort of miracle happened there. But we make it through, and now we got to start putting the pieces back together because the state finals are this weekend. What was your thinking on rescheduling this game? How did it come about?
Well, when we first got to the hospital, I met with Stacy Adams, the athletic director at Griffith, and Brian Orcus, the principal. And we had some brief conversation. Basically, to start the discussion was, okay, how is everybody accounted for? And yes, the answer was everybody's accounted for. Are there any life-threatening injuries? No, there are no life-threatening injuries. Then we started talking secondarily about, do you want to play? And even as I was in the hospital, I talked to a couple student athletes, and I think it was pretty apparent even at that time that if at all possible, that the team wanted to play. So then it becomes a question of, when do you play the game? And so I let the schools, both Griffith and Marion, have an overnight to discuss and think about what was going to happen. The Marion administrators came to a prayer service there in Griffith, and then there was a meeting between the administrations of both schools and a conference call that I was involved in. And I wanted both of them to tell me their side and exactly what their feelings were and what their preferences were. And then once I heard the story from both sides and what they wanted to consider, then I said, give me an hour because I want to discuss this with our staff. And so we did that. And so within the hour, I called all the administrations back and let them know that we were going to play the game on Wednesday night in Lafayette at 6 o'clock.
You've been in contact with Stacy Adams and with the Griffith administrators. We tried to stay away from telling Marion who's hurt and who's not, but obviously there's some people still ailing how does that play into all of this?
Well, I think let's just go the other direction. If this would have been more severe, and thank God it wasn't, but there's a pretty good chance that they would have forfeited the game. There would have been a pretty good chance they wouldn't have been able to play, but the state tournament would have gone on. Now, that didn't happen. Thank God that didn't happen. So then we get to a place of, okay, can you put a team together? That's Griffith's answer. That's their challenge. Can you put a team together? And the response we received from the school is yes, we can put a team together and we can play on Wednesday. Now, I don't think that Wednesday would have been their first choice. I think early in the discussion we heard Friday. Well, that's unacceptable. You can't play a game on Friday, and let's just assume that Griffith doesn't win the game. We're going to ask Marion to turn around and play for a state championship the next day. And it's not fair to Evansville-Bosse, who's already earned their opportunity to be in the state championship, for them to say, well, you don't get to play in Bankers Life Fieldhouse, or we're not going to play that game. We're going to do this some other time. And so while those are secondary considerations, they certainly entered into the conversation.
We're talking to IHSAA Commissioner Bobby Cox, and once again, I will put the shameless plug that you need to go down I-65 to see what could be very well be a historic matchup between Marion Giants and our own Griffith Panthers today at 5 o'clock. Brian Jennings on the call starting at 4:45. Bobby, this comes in the context of a huge legal battle going on right now. That's on the discussion boards. I mean, it's a matter of every time we start talking Griffith basketball, it comes up. In light of the crash, has your legal strategy had any modifications?
No, if you're speaking about the Griffith-Hammond matter, these are totally separate incidences, and the reality of even trying to connect them is inappropriate. There's nothing to do. This incident that these young people went through last Saturday has absolutely nothing to do with the incidences and the things that occurred 1 year ago. They are totally separate. There was no decision-making that went into this decision that had anything to do with the legal issues that we're dealing with previously.
Yesterday on these airwaves, Gary Hayes stood up for his kids in a certain manner, and he said to you, basically, get off the kids, enough's enough. What do you say to Gary Hayes?
Well, I tell Coach Hayes that he certainly has a right to his opinion, and I respect his opinion. But I also have to administer this association for 408 member schools. And the reality is that the school and the players violated IHSAA rules a year ago in that incident with Hammond High School. And it was adjudicated, and it was taken to a lower court. And the schools made the determination with parents that they were going to sue the IHSAA. And they did that. And we answered that lawsuit. And we appealed that lawsuit. And we took it to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals overturned the lower court. That's the way justice is executed in this state. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about today and the lives of these young boys who were in a bus accident and now going to play a basketball game for the opportunity to play for a state championship. And the fact that we're even trying to connect the two is offensive to me.
Well, I'm sorry that it's offensive to you, Bobby, but it's offensive to a lot of people up here in Northwest Indiana, how the IHSAA has continued to pursue a group of young kids who have exhibited just an incredible amount of self-control and have redeemed themselves on the basketball court. So if that's offensive to you, I'm sorry in that regard, but I'm not sorry in that I'm bringing it up to you right now because it has to be cleared. There, you have the coach of Griffith on these airwaves, can't contain himself because that's one of the first things he thinks about. Can the IHSAA leave us alone? It's what was on the tongues of these players. It's on the tongues of the people up here. They feel like you have gone too far. What do you say to people who say that you have gone too far?
Well, I would just say this, Jim. If the schools and the parents would not have sued the association and would have acquiesced to the decision that was rendered by our review committee, which these two schools are voluntary members, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So if the schools and the students sue the IHSAA, does not the IHSAA have the ability to appeal similar to what the students and the schools did? This is an organization of 408 voluntary members.
That's a question that obviously will get sorted out in the courts, Bobby, but you do understand how these folks feel right now. I mean, it sounds as if you're trying to set a precedent on jurisdictional matters that people can't sue you and be able to play. And caught in the middle are a group of kids that Gary Hayes is standing up for. And
I appreciate Gary Hayes' stance with his kids. And I've met some of those kids, and they are wonderful kids. They made a mistake. The difference between these two incidences is that the kids in the bus accident had absolutely no control over what happened to them. None whatsoever.
So
in the incident a year ago with Griffith and Hammond, they had every bit of opportunity to control it, and they didn't. That's the difference.
Well, I think you've pretty much outlined exactly how it's going to be going forward. Of course, your stance on this matter is highly challenged here in the Calumet region, but you know what? I certainly respect you taking that stance, and as much as I disagree with it, I definitely appreciate you calling in this morning and kind of giving some perspective to the crash and all of the situation that's going on down at Lafayette Jefferson. Anything else you want to tell the Calumet region?
Well, I just want to wish the Griffith kids the best of luck tonight. The reality is they've gone through a traumatic experience, and no kid should have to go through that. No adult should have to go through that. And I respect and applaud their courage for being willing to play a game tonight. I saw that bus, and I saw the kids in that hospital, and it takes a lot of courage and effort and resilience to even decide to play a basketball game. And so I wish them the best of luck. I hope that we can get through the game, and those kids aren't going to suffer anything from residual from the bumps and the bruises and the strains that they received during the accident. And looking forward to a great basketball game, and we'll determine a winner of that game, and we'll move on with the state championship.
There it goes. I'll see you there tonight.
All right, I'll be there, Jim.
Talk to you. Thanks, Bobby.
All right.
AM 1230 WJOB in Hammond.